My mom got pregnant with me when she was really young, and unfortunately my dad was never in the picture from day one. My grandfather really stepped in as my dad. He had raised my mom. It was his last name that was on my birth certificate. He was my dad. And so growing up as a child, I spent a lot of time in his home, and he was a very strong Christian, very devout in his faith. We went to church all the time. And the thing you hear about God all the time is that God is your father. I think for me that was an analogy that was really hard for me to grasp. When people would say, well, just think of God as your dad, and I would say, I don't know how to do that. I don't have a dad. And even later in life, I was adopted by my aunt and uncle when I was about 10. And my uncle was very much a dad figure to me, and I loved him as my dad, and I still consider him to be my dad. But I think that deep sense of shame that I was abandoned by my father, that my father didn't want me, that even before I was born, he chose to not know me. And I think that just left a scar in my soul that it just hurts you. It just hurts a lot. I think a turning point for me was the summer before I started high school. I remember I was away on a family trip at the lake when we got the call that my grandfather had passed away. As a 14-year-old, man, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I guess when you're 14, you just expect people to live forever. And had no idea that my grandfather could be taken from me in a second. And when that news came, it was absolutely devastating, because as I've said, he wasn't just my grandfather, he was my father. I felt like I was losing two people in one, and it just wrecked me. I mean, it just absolutely wrecked me. I remember the night before his funeral. We were at his home in southern Oklahoma, out in the country, and I remember I was out beneath these trees on the property, and I was looking up to the sky, and I was looking at the stars. And for the first time that I can really remember in a meaningful way, I remember looking up to God and just saying, what am I going to do? A Tuesday morning, it was June 30th, 1992. And I remember we're at my grandfather's funeral, and I don't remember a lot about the service itself, but at the end of the funeral, where they opened up the casket and they allowed the family to pass by for a final viewing, I stood beside my grandfather's casket and was very broken, very emotional. And I remember I reached down and I grabbed his hand, and it was so hard because his hand was cold. Through my tears, I just made this promise, really a vow. And I just said, I don't know what all I'm going to have to do, but I promise you I'll see you in heaven one day. And when I understood that I could know God, and that Jesus had made the way for me, and that sense of fear and rejection and shame and abandonment that I had lived with, for all those years, that didn't have to be my reality anymore, that God loved me as a son. And when you're a teenage young man on the edge of starting that chapter of your life, you just want to be a son. You can be known for a lot of things, but you want to be a son. And God became my father 25 years ago. And a quarter of a century later, he's still my father. I've had so many ups and downs, so many struggles and failures, yet his love is faithful, it's consistent, it's unfailing. And he's just been constant. And every single time I turn back to him and say, am I still okay to come home? Am I still your boy? And it's always a resounding yes. And his affection for me has transformed who I am today. And it's helped me to know how to love my daughter. I was so scared becoming a dad, because I'm like, how do you give to someone something you've never had? But God in his grace has given me a beautiful wife who is my partner in all things. And he has loved me in a way that has allowed me to just extend to my daughter the same grace, mercy, affection, joy, It's been a form of grace that has taken me into waters even deeper. And I can't even put into words how thankful I am for that.